Hey Chris, how wide should my feet be on squats? I don't give a fuck. Just you'll bleep that. I really like how you're doing that. Been bleeping it. All right guys, I kind of joked with the intro, but the truth is I really don't care. I'm being brutally honest when I say that. The stance in my mind that you squat with is the one that you feel the most natural with. The one that makes you feel the most athletic, the most strong in terms of strength and where you have the most power, right? That's where I want your stance to be. For me personally, that's at my heels at hip width and my toes turned out slightly to like what I would consider 11 and 1 if you're looking at a clock. That's where I feel the most powerful. That's where I feel the most strong. That's where I can move the most weight. It makes my quads fire like you wouldn't believe. So when you step in the squat rack and you're questioning, when say you're newer to lifting, or hey, I want to get back into squatting and I can't figure out the optimal squat stance. To me, there's so many factors that play in that. Your limb length, your torso length, your flexibility, your ankle mobility, all play into that. Well, instead of trying to force yourself into a certain position or biomechanics, why don't we just do what feels the most natural to your body? Do what you feel your quads fire like crazy, and that's gonna give us the most growth. So, let's take everything that I just said, get under this yoke bar, and show you some reps. Like I said, I like hip width, toes slightly out. So if you can see where my stance are, this to me is what I would consider an athletic stance for me. I grew up playing sports, playing baseball, playing football, basketball, all of this put me in this position where I can get glutes and ass, quads, hamstrings going and moving serious amounts of load. So when I sit down into this, watch how natural I can sink down in that and hold this position. I'm literally holding it because this feels great for my hips. My knees are tracking over my toes to get optimal quad engagement, and I'm gonna drive straight up. So boom, down, sit in the hole, break at the hip, bam, break at the hip, break at the hip. Just like that. All right, next up, the narrow stance. Made famous by Tom Platz. So let him swing around and show you from the back how narrow I mean. Look where my heels are in relation to my hips. My hips are right where my fingers are. So that's gonna be inside of hip width for me. Now, let me talk through when I squat and do this. Can I get to about right there? It starts to feel unnatural as hell to me. Now, some people would say, Chris, this is a great spot for quads. I just don't feel very powerful. When I sink down, I feel like I'm losing power and it's cramping my tibia. I just don't feel great here. Not anywhere considered this. Moving that 2 inches out makes the world of difference for me. To where this, bam, I feel strong. Boom. Shit. I get 4 or 5 plates on this motherfucker right now if my life depended on it. This feels good. Bam. Now, let's talk through a wide stance. So, I know a lot of you guys may be powerlifters if you're watching this. This video, completely ignore it. That's about moving the most weight from point A to point B. Or, now on the flip side, a lot of coaches will prescribe these to girls. Sumo stance squats to get glutes. And if you have the hip mobility, which I don't, this is great. Because let me show you, when I squat, right there feels tight as shit. So I can't get these really deep. Right there, and I already start to feel like shit. So I couldn't get 2 plates on this thing. Right there, oh, and that feels tight. I'm gonna rack it. There you have it, guys. The 3 different squat stance and why I prefer the one that fits you best. And that takes in the trenches work. That takes getting under the bar, feeling what feels natural, what you feel the most power with, what you have the most connection to your muscle with. If you feel that in the joint, whether it be your knees or your hips, more than you feel it in your quads, hamstrings, and glutes, something is wrong. You have to change your stance to fit your biomechanics. That is the takeaway of this video. So I know you want an answer like your heels should be 18.5 inches apart and your toes should be 22.5 inches apart. And I'm sure there's some fancy doctor out there with a PhD behind his name that'll tell you that. But A, who's gonna get a ruler out and mark that shit on the floor? Not this dude. And then 2, can't we just go where you feel the best? Like no one has to tell me where to put my feet. I just know because I've been doing it for years at this point. And if you're new to this, you have to experiment. The way I found that stance was through trial and error. I said, oh, Tom Platz does it this way, let me try it. Doesn't feel good. Oh, Ronnie Coleman does it this way, that feels okay. Oh, Jay Cutler does this way, this feels great. And that's how my squat progression went, guys. It's as simple as that. Experimenting, trial, error, where you have the most power. Then once you find your right stance, guess what the next step is? Get brutally fucking strong with the same form. There's the secrets. That's how you get bigger. You wanna know how you get legs like mine? It isn't because I have crazy genetics. My parents are skinny as hell. My legs are big because I found out what worked for me and I drove that bitch into the ground. Every week for over almost at this point, 2 decades. 2 decades of squatting and leg pressing and lunging and leg extensions and leg curls. That's the secret. Find what works for you and ride that bitch till the wheels fall off. As cliche as that sounds, it's the truth. Until next time, guys, like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you comment below. Tell me what your favorite squat stance is. And maybe we can have a fun debate back and forth. But in the day, guess who's right? You are. For you. Until next time, guys, Christmas TV.